Look very closely at the front office of the Indiana Fever. Look at the fake smiles, the press conferences, and the carefully crafted corporate statements. They are lying directly to your face. The biggest, most highly coordinated corporate sabotage in the history of women's professional basketball is no longer happening across the league. It is happening right inside their own building. Welcome back to WNBA Pro. I need you to lock the doors, turn off your notifications, and give me your absolute, undivided, clinical attention today, because what we are about to expose is going to permanently alter the way you view the entire Indiana Fever organization. The mainstream sports media is entirely compromised. They are desperately trying to sell you a highly sanitized narrative about free agency. They want you to believe that General Manager Amber Cox, President Kelly Krauskopf, and head coach Stephanie White are simply making tough basketball decisions. They want you to blindly consume the narrative that keeping veteran players is just standard roster building. But you are absolutely not a casual fan. You are a high-level operator. And operators know exactly how to read the dark, incredibly toxic, deeply financial motives hiding beneath the surface. We are not looking at basketball decisions today. We are looking at absolute, unmitigated fiduciary treason. Do not let the corporate marketing budget deceive you for a single microscopic second. The Indiana Fever Brain Trust, acting under the heavy-handed influence of a deeply insecure veteran establishment, is actively preparing to execute the most cowardly, malicious, and mathematically destructive financial maneuver in the modern history of the sport. They are actively planning to choose Kelsey Mitchell over Caitlin Clark. I need that specific paradigm-shifting, utterly terrifying reality to sink deep into your cognitive processing right now.
And maybe it's not even a mistake on their end. Stephanie White has already come out and said how Kelsey Mitchell is the #1 priority and how she wants to build this team around Kelsey Mitchell. And if they are committing to giving her a...
Listen to the absolute, unapologetic disrespect radiating from that specific strategic leak. Head coach Stephanie White has explicitly, publicly stated that retaining Kelsey Mitchell is the absolute #1 priority for the franchise. She has openly declared that she wants to build the offensive infrastructure around a 29-year-old volume scorer instead of the single greatest perimeter playmaker and economic engine on the face of the planet. Do you possess the intellectual capacity to understand the level of blatant corporate sabotage required to make a statement like that? You have the undisputed chief executive officer of the entire global basketball ecosystem currently sitting on your roster. A player who single-handedly resurrected your completely bankrupt, entirely irrelevant franchise from the dark ages. A player who forced the multinational television networks to rip up their contracts and hand the WNBA a multi-billion-dollar media deal. And your new head coach looks the global media dead in the eye and claims that a veteran shooting guard is her top priority. That is absolutely not a harmless coaching preference. That is a highly political mandate, handed down directly from an establishment that is desperately trying to artificially suppress Caitlin Clark's absolute market leverage. But why? Why would a professional sports organization actively, maliciously attempt to diminish their own billion-dollar asset? Why would they purposefully disrespect the only player who is actually generating the revenue that pays their massive executive salaries? The answer is hidden deep inside the fine print of the newly signed collective bargaining agreement, and it exposes a level of financial terror that will completely freeze your blood.
Sports and Alexa Philippou, the new CBA will allow high-performing players on rookie contracts to earn larger fourth-year salaries, all right? Players who make all WNBA first or second team in their first 3 years can make the max in the fourth year.
I need you to critically analyze the mathematically impossible, highly lucrative reality of the new WNBA economy. The new CBA completely revolutionized the rookie scale contracts. If a player achieves absolute, undeniable excellence in their first 3 years, they trigger massive financial escalators. And the ultimate, undisputed grand prize of this new economic structure is the MVP Supermax. If Caitlin Clark wins the Most Valuable Player award this upcoming season, she instantly becomes eligible to sign a catastrophic, franchise-altering fourth-year contract worth a staggering $1.7 million. And right alongside her, Aaliyah Boston is rapidly approaching a massive $1.3 million payday. Now, I want you to run those numbers with the cold, detached precision of a Wall Street corporate auditor. You absolutely cannot mathematically afford to pay Caitlin Clark $1.7 million, Aaliyah Boston $1.3 million, and simultaneously hand Kelsey Mitchell a massive multi-year max contract worth roughly $1.4 million. The salary cap math simply does not exist. It is a complete and total financial impossibility. The front office is staring directly at a massive, unresolvable economic collision. So they have to make a choice. And if Amber Cox and Stephanie White are aggressively publicly committing to handing Kelsey Mitchell a massive long-term maximum contract, they have already made their decision. They have officially, undeniably chosen the veteran establishment over the future of the global franchise. If you commit that massive percentage of your salary cap to Mitchell, you are mathematically guaranteeing the destruction of the core roster. You are actively, intentionally choosing to let elite, highly synergistic perimeter defenders like Lexi Hull and Sophie Cunningham walk away in free agency. You are completely destroying the highly profitable Tres Leches chemistry that Caitlin Clark desperately needs to operate at maximum efficiency. But the absolute undeniable malice of this corporate cover-up does not even stop at the salary cap. The Indiana Fever ownership group is suffering from a massive, completely delusional organizational ego trip. They are actively attempting to hijack the narrative and completely erase the reality of their own success.
That's your whole goal. Let's be clear here with what the Indiana Fever's goal is. The goal of the Indiana Fever is to build up the organization and get the fans to want to lock in with them so that they can make this money.
Listen to the sheer, unadulterated corporate arrogance in that specific observation. The Indiana Fever front office is obsessed with becoming the Apple of women's basketball. They are desperately, pathetically trying to build an organizational brand that commands blind loyalty from the consumer. They want the fans to fall in love with the logo on the jersey so that when Caitlin Clark inevitably gets entirely fed up with their toxic mismanagement and leaves in free agency, the massive arenas will miraculously remain sold out. They want to completely separate the historic financial boom from the player who actually generated it. It is a complete, undeniable corporate hallucination. They did not magically generate this historic capital. They did not suddenly discover the secret formula for generational wealth. They are actively, shamelessly riding the coattails of the greatest kinetic and economic engine the sport has ever seen. Me and you, the millions of highly engaged consumers who actively pay for the expensive tickets, buy the merchandise, and generate the massive television ratings. We are not tuning in to watch the Indiana Fever logo. We are tuning in exclusively to watch the 24-year-old anomaly from Iowa completely manipulate time, space, and defensive geometry. If Caitlin Clark decides to take her billion-dollar brand and play for a different franchise, the Indiana Fever economic ecosystem will instantly, violently collapse back into the dark ages. They will immediately return to playing in empty gymnasiums, begging for scraps of local television revenue. But the executives are so completely blinded by their own fragile egos that they are entirely willing to risk the entire dynasty just to prove they are the smartest people in the boardroom. And this brings us to the most terrifying, deeply offensive part of this entire saga. If the front office has mathematically decided that they absolutely do not want to pay Caitlin Clark a $1.7 million Supermax contract in 2027, how exactly do they prevent her from triggering the clause? How do you stop the greatest player on the planet from winning the MVP award? You cannot stop her in the boardroom. You have to stop her on the hardwood.
Do it. Here it says Caitlin Clark will become eligible for the Supermax in 2027 if she wins MVP this season. Do you think they're going to want her to make $1.7 million next season? No, which means they're going to sabotage. They're going to stay in the way. They're going to try to minimize her so that she doesn't win the MVP. She's tied with A'ja Wilson as the odds-on.
I want you to critically analyze the deeply sinister, highly coordinated tactical sabotage that is currently loading in the background. Stephanie White was not hired to elevate Caitlin Clark. Stephanie White was hired to actively, maliciously suppress her. If Caitlin Clark is the odds-on favorite to win the MVP, and winning the MVP forces the cheap, highly insecure ownership group to pay her nearly $2 million, the coaching staff receives a direct, heavy-handed corporate mandate to artificially deflate her statistics. How did they execute this treason? It is incredibly simple and absolutely disgusting. They take the basketball out of her hands. They run the entire half-court offense through Kelsey Mitchell. They actively encourage Mitchell to aggressively hunt for her own individual volume statistics, taking 20 to 25 highly inefficient isolation shots per game. And whenever Caitlin Clark attempts to take over the geometric reality of the game, whenever she launches a massive laser-guided transition pass or takes a deep logo three, the coaching staff immediately calls a timeout, pulls her to the sideline, and aggressively labels her elite processing speed as hero ball. They will actively, intentionally weaponize the media against her. They will use the press conferences to subtly diminish her impact, claiming that the team needs balance and veteran leadership. They will completely hijack the offensive pacing, slowing the game down to a sluggish, completely predictable crawl, simply because they are absolutely terrified of letting her run the offense and secure the MVP hardware. They are entirely willing to drag the entire franchise into an incredibly dangerous, grinding dogfight. Every single night, they are entirely willing to lose crucial regular season games just to ensure that Caitlin Clark's numbers stay artificially grounded. It is an absolute, undeniable corporate extortion attempt built entirely on raw, unadulterated financial greed. The establishment is playing an incredibly dangerous, highly destructive game of corporate chicken with their own franchise player, and they are actively, aggressively destroying the goodwill of the exact demographic that pays their massive salaries. They are biting the hand that feeds them with the ferocious, blind ignorance of a rabid animal. And the most infuriating aspect of this entire catastrophic situation is that the mathematically correct, highly profitable solution is sitting right there in front of them. Amber Cox and Kelly Krauskopf have the ultimate, unanswerable trump card at their disposal, but they completely lack the fundamental business acumen and the sheer mental capacity to execute it. If you are a legitimate, championship-level general manager, you do not hand Kelsey Mitchell a massive, cap-destroying maximum contract. You apply the core designation to her, you secure her rights, and you immediately, ruthlessly trade her to a desperate franchise for an absolute king's ransom of elite assets. You trade the volume scorer for highly specialized, elite rim-running bigs who can set bone-crushing screens. You trade her for elite, switchable perimeter defenders who can knock down wide-open corner threes when the defense inevitably collapses on Clark's gravity. You completely liquidate the veteran hierarchy, and you build a highly optimized, completely unguardable monopolistic enterprise entirely around your CEO. But they won't do it. They are too incredibly weak. They are too absolutely terrified of the veteran establishment. They are too obsessed with looking like the smartest executives in the room. They would rather overpay an aging veteran and actively sabotage the greatest playmaker of this generation than swallow their immense pride and admit that their entire organizational worth is tied to a single player. The WNBA preseason is rapidly approaching. The real, undeniable, high-stakes regular season games are loading, and when that season officially tips off in May, we are going to witness a brutal, highly toxic civil war playing out directly on the hardwood. Caitlin Clark will not just be fighting the opposing defense, she will be fighting a coaching staff that was hired to actively suppress her. She will be fighting a front office that is completely terrified of paying her. And she will be operating under a massive, suffocating cloud of toxic corporate politics. But you cannot artificially suppress a fundamental law of physics, and you absolutely cannot suppress the undeniable crushing weight of elite, generational basketball leverage. The global market has already spoken. The viewers, the sponsors, and the massive global syndicates do not care about the heavily padded, selfish isolation box scores of the legacy veterans. They do not care about the deeply flawed, highly politicized substitution patterns of a coaching staff that is desperately out of its depth. They only care about raw, high-speed, highly efficient kinetic production, and Caitlin Clark is the only asset on the entire global board mathematically capable of delivering that specific product at a macroeconomic scale. The institutional gaslighting we are about to witness from the Indiana Fever front office is nothing more than the desperate dying breath of an obsolete hierarchy. The executives can hold their press conferences, they can proudly brag about their Apple brand, and they can arrogantly prioritize the veterans. But the reality is already written on the wall in permanent ink. The hostile takeover is completely mathematically inevitable, and the total, unmitigated liquidation of the incompetent front office is rapidly approaching. Welcome to the absolute meat grinder. Thank you for joining me here on WNBA Pro, where we completely ruthlessly dissect the undeniable reality of the sports business. We do not deal in manufactured narratives or cowardly corporate spin here. We deal in the absolute brutal truth of the numbers. If you want the most ruthless, analytical, and honest basketball content on the entire internet, make sure you smash that subscribe button and drop a massive like on this video. Let me know in the comments section below exactly how many games will the Indiana Fever lose this season because Stephanie White deliberately takes the ball out of Caitlin Clark's hands to protect the billionaire owners' wallets. I will see you in the next breakdown. Do not dare blink, because the corporate civil war is just getting started, and the weak will be entirely left behind in the dust.